Hello fellow video game enjoyers. Today I'm going to be talking about my first few days in the new Last Epoch season, the two builds that I've played so far, why I won't be playing them anymore, and I'm going to be switching to an entirely new class that I've never played before, because most of you guys know that I'm a pretty big Acolyte enjoyer, and despite all of the reworks, the builds just haven't quite landed with me. However, I still want to talk about them because they're really cool builds. They're just not really for me. And also maybe some first impressions when it comes to the new season. I was extremely happy with how the last season of Last Epoch went. I really think that all the new league mechanics brought the entirety of the end game together, and this new season is not really too different in that regard as well. The new league mechanic only continues to build on an already excellent crafting system, and it allows that much more customization to the characters. I really like the way that you're able to farm out the items. It's extremely reasonable. I kind of thought that maybe farming the vendor items is going to be tricky, but overall it's been very accessible, very nice. I'm not quite sure, because it's only been about 2 days, I'm not quite sure how it's going to look like long term when you need a lot of LP maybe on your gear, and whether or not this new system is going to be some form of a bottleneck. But it seems impactful, it seems quite fun. It is very difficult at the early stages of the game. Some of the mobs in those caves and some of the attacks on some of the evolved bosses do a tremendous amount of damage. But overall, I think it's a pretty good addition to the game, and hopefully it's going to stay. I think mostly for Last Epoch, whenever there's a new league mechanic, it's not like in PoE where it goes away or it doesn't get fully implemented. So far, most of the league mechanics have been successful, and I think they're here to stay. But yeah, when it comes to the builds, it's been an interesting journey. I started off with a Warlock build that would rely on Chthonic Fissure and Infernal Shade. I didn't really plan too far ahead when it comes to this, but later on I found out that Dreadful, who is a prominent Last Epoch content creator, was playing the same build, and so that kind of reassured me, at least the idea of the build was the same. That kind of reassured me that, you know what, maybe I'm onto something here, maybe this is gonna work. Apparently he's played it a bunch before, and I kind of checked out the gameplay, and it looked really nice, and so that was the build that I ended up going. However, one key difference between our two different playstyles is that I play on hardcore, and he mostly plays on softcore, trade league as well. I was kind of conflicted whether I want to go trade league or if I want to go SSF. That's like an entire video on its own, because most of you guys know me as an SSF player. Why would I want to go play trade? I think trade is pretty cool. You know, every now and then you want to engage with the economy, and it makes for a pretty cool experience. But this time around, yeah, I was going to stick with SSF. And for that reason, the main thing was that I really needed to kind of focus a little bit more on the defenses of the build. And I gotta say, I never managed to do it. I really enjoyed the build. The playstyle is quite simple. You put down a Chthonic Rift, and then you use the nodes on the Chthonic Rift to pop your Infernal Shade that then does a tremendous amount of damage. Initially, I think the build is called a Bagel Warlock, which means that you take every type of ailment, especially the damaging ones, and you try to do as much damage as possible with those ailments to the enemies. But through the use of the new Carrion of Creation gloves, you're able to take all of those different ailments and turn them into bleed, which bleed is a really strong ailment. Obviously, you can focus on like a specific type of penetration. You can focus on a specific type of damage and not just general damage, so you have more damage increases that you have access to. And overall, it just makes for a better character. I never got to that point. I never ended up getting the gloves because despite the fact that typically in Last Epoch I consider the game quite easy, this new season really brought in a slew of changes that seemingly came out of nowhere. When reading the patch notes, I primarily focused on the Acolyte changes, and I was thinking, okay, you know, not that much about Acolyte changed really. despite the developers kind of saying that they reworked the entire class. In my opinion, primarily it was nerfs. Unfortunately, only parts of snapshotting got fixed. A lot of the minion builds are either not really particularly playable despite the AI changes, or they're outright bugged, like Abomination, for instance. Mobs are still sliding around and all of these sort of things. But I kind of thought, you know, more or less it's going to be a similar experience to what I've had before, and the experience that I had before was really fun, so why not? But the thing that I didn't really realize is that the game became a lot harder. Everybody seems to be noticing that mobs are doing a lot more damage throughout the campaign. Different bosses are doing a lot more damage. The new league mechanic, like I mentioned previously, does a ton of damage in the early game. And I really wasn't able to build up enough defense to feel like I'm not about to rip in just about every single monolith. And we are talking pre-empowered monoliths, because of the way that this build deals damage is that, again, you put down the Chthonic Fissure, and then you place a Infernal Shade onto the mobs, and then the Chthonic Fissure has to hit the Infernal Shade, and it blows it up. The Chthonic Fissure does decent damage, but it has a problem with hitting mobs that are especially fast. And things are super fast, and they hit super hard in this season. So a lot of the times, I would find that mobs would hit me even before the Chthonic Fissure landed, let alone I got to plant the Inferno Shade. So I never really thought that I'm going to be able to survive on this playstyle, and I ended up deciding to pivot to another build that I have played before, but I haven't played in this particular version on max roll, is the Stygian Call Lich guide. And I have made some changes to this. Again, I will be leaving the build guides in the description below if you guys are interested, if you think the gameplay looks fun. What's cool is I don't think there's any more bugs with this build. It was a build that was really buggy in the past, which was really frustrating. Now, I think the only bugs that are happening are visual. It seems like some of the colors are not converting despite picking up some nodes. But I think for the most part, it's doing all the damage correctly. But unfortunately, one, I wasn't really able to get the damage to the point where it was especially comfortable. I was playing a little bit of a different version than the one posted on Maxroll. And quite frankly, maybe that's a mistake. So on Maxroll, they recommend to focus on damage and use Marrow Shards for more damage. This is like an automated setup, and you proc it through the use of Rib Blood. And what's cool about Rib Blood also is that not only did it get updated so that it's a lot easier to hit things and whatnot, you use this to generate a buff that gives you flat spell damage. Unfortunately, this has been severely nerfed, but it's still really good. And then also you use Rib Blood to sustain your mana. I decided to go with Aura of Decay, which gave me a substantial amount of survivability and recovery, because on hardcore, a big problem with the Lich is that you're constantly degenning your current HP due to the way that the passive points work. And it sometimes can make for a really sketchy situation where you're not paying attention and you go into a monolith and your reperform is not up and you have 1 HP and something touches you, or you do something that deals damage to yourself and you just kill yourself, right? And, you know, I'm a streamer. I'm always doing different things. I was trying to avoid that as much as possible, because it would really suck if I kill myself in my, you know, hideout or whatever. That would be really tragic. So I went with Aura of Decay. And then for when it comes to the Spirit Generation, I went with the classic old school Wandering Spirits with Mana Generation. And I picked up the Eternal Servitude node, which really makes for a very comfy playstyle because you're constantly regenerating mana. But I do think that probably in the long term, the setup on Maxroll is the correct approach, and it is the correct choice. And yeah, it's a really fun build, but the reason why I don't want to play it anymore is because I've played it in the past. I thought that, yeah, maybe this different approach is going to make it a little bit more interesting for me. But no, unfortunately, that's not the case, you know? One, I haven't really been able to do the amount of damage that I've wanted to with the level of gear that I have. I'm only in like early empowered monoliths, which was kind of annoying, I'm not gonna lie, after the infinity of damage that you get with the Infernal Shade build. But instead, I was extremely tanky. Super tanky. The new passive points for the Acolyte are immensely powerful. They make for a much more well-rounded, balanced character. Again, I just wasn't really willing to put in the time to build up the damage. And yeah, instead I was looking at maybe playing a much more well-rounded build, right? A build that can do both damage and has a ton of defense and has a ton of sustain, because I think that's really important in Last Epoch. And that's gonna be the next step in my journey. That's gonna be the Totem Shaman from Bina. I've seen him play it on his stream. It looked really fun. There are some requirements, and I've really never played a different class than Acolyte in Last Epoch at all, other than maybe a little bit of Mage. So it should make for a really interesting experience. I will be streaming that today if you guys want to watch it, if you're maybe seeing this video exactly when I'm booting up the stream today. And yeah, I can't promise that I'm gonna love it, right? I really don't know, but for the most part, it should be something new. I mean, it's definitely something new. And then also it should be something that's going to have a much more well-rounded playstyle, while at the same time scratching that minion itch, that totem itch that I was for the most part getting with Stygian Call. But yeah, I just need a little bit of a different look to it. And it does seem to focus on items that I've previously played with, and farming those was really fun on the Abomination build that I've played on the last season. The only difference being, because some of you guys might be asking, why don't you just play Abomination again or Wraithlord? Yes, I really like those builds, and yes, I could play them again, but quite frankly, I can't deal with the snapshotting. After many years of the devs promising that they're going to be removing snapshotting, they removed a part of it. They removed the item snapshotting, but you still have to go through a giant process of changing your skills and swapping things to snapshot on the Abomination. And to my understanding, also it's bugged and it doesn't even really work. If you take a look over here, this is what you have to go through to summon your Abomination now, and it still disappears if your game crashes. Although this season I haven't really had any game crashes. That was really annoying last season, but it was probably mostly due to my broken CPU that is now fixed, so I haven't had those issues. But nonetheless, it's still pretty tremendously annoying, and I just don't want to deal with it. It's a similar concept for the Wraithlord. So yeah, that's the goal, that's the plan, that's how my league start has been going. Overall, to summarize, new season, pretty fun. New mechanic, pretty fun. The Acolyte builds that I've previously mentioned, fun, even though not for me. But again, if you like the gameplay in the background, then you might think this is something for you. And they're definitely tested, they're definitely tried and true, and they're really quite nice. But for me, the next step in the journey is Totem Shaman. So if you want to check it out, again, if you're watching the video when it's being posted, I should be leveling on the stream. And hopefully I'm going to be leveling it, or I'm going to be in the end game with it. I don't know. We'll see. All right, I'll see you guys in the next one. I'll probably be posting an update on how things are going soon. Remember to subscribe, and I'll see you later.